Hello, everyone. We've got Jake Shimabukuro here. Jake, thank you so much for being with us tonight. This has been wonderful. That was a fantastic performance, and we're so glad you're here with us tonight to answer some questions and go into a little bit more detail.
Oh, thank you. No, such an honor. I was joking around and saying earlier, I should have ran a few laps. I can be like, oh man, I'm so winded after that performance. I'd be all sweaty.
You're in
But
the same spot. It's all keeping it continuous there. Fantastic.
oh, thank you. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the live concert. So thank you.
Wonderful. As we let people kind of roll in here, I kind of just wanted to start off and just kind of ask you. You spoke a little bit about this in your performance, but where and how did you get your or how did your musical journey begin?
Oh, well, I started quite young. Growing up in Hawaii, my both of my parents played a little bit of ukulele, and so my mom was actually my first teacher. And when I was about 4 years old, she sat me down, taught me a few chords, and I just fell in love with it. I remember how simple it was, to just hold the strings down
Mhm.
because the strings were made out of nylon. And my dad had a guitar too. He had one of those Yamaha acoustic guitars,
Yeah,
and I remember with the steel strings, I remember how sharp and uncomfortable those strings were. So I loved playing the ukulele because the strings were so soft on my fingers, and I don't know, and I couldn't put it down. I loved, and I love it. I love playing it as much today as I did back then. So
that's fantastic. Well, we can jump right into the questions here. I know we've got one from Ryan Forbes. Could you tell us about your instruments, the various ones you play, your favorites, and why?
oh, sure. Um, I've always been I've always been a fan of Kamako ukuleles, and the
Mm.
reason, I mean, I don't have any sponsorship or endorsements or anything, but one of the things that for me growing up in Hawaii, all of my heroes and the people I grew up listening to, that's what they played. And the Kamaka family, they were the first Hawaiian family to start learning how to make those instruments, from the Portuguese immigrants who came over to the islands, that were instrument builders. And so they're going on, I mean, four generations of ukulele makers. They've been making ukuleles for over 100 years, and I just think they're just also, not only do they make fantastic instruments, but they're just the nicest people, always giving back to the community. And I've just they've been just such great role models, for me growing up. And so I'm always honored, and I feel so privileged, to play their instruments. In fact, um, I have one here. This is a beautiful
That's
Kamaka tenor
beautiful.
that they made for me here.
Wonderful.
It's made out of koa wood, which is the indigenous. It's a type of acacia, from the
Okay.
acacia tree, and but this particular type is indigenous to Hawaii. This is the one I played tonight for the live
Okay.
concert. As you can see, there's a lot more wear and tear on this one, but they just really spectacular instruments.
Ah, wonderful. Well, we've got quite a few questions rolling in. This is great. This is when it says the performance was amazing. Thank you. My question is, what was the largest venue you have ever played?
Oh, well, probably tonight, right? Being this is the World Wide Web. This is there's
The
no
entire
there's
globe.
no boundaries. No, gosh, I don't know. I've been very fortunate, to play in some amazing places. I mean, the Brooks Center for the Performing Arts is an incredible world class,
Oh, thank you.
theater. So it's I I know playing at home virtually, it's just, I mean, we all know it's not the same,
Right.
right? But I was telling Thomas earlier that I just feel like with musicians, artists, and the venues, it's just a beautiful collaboration, that
Yeah,
happens, and one can't exist without the other, right? Because as a
absolutely.
musician, we need that platform and that the venue, right,
Yeah,
to do our thing. And when you play in a well-crafted venue that is made specifically, for artistic deliverance
yeah,
or creativity, um, there's something magical that happens, right? Because you're truly creating something in the moment, right?
right.
Because you can only do it when you're there
Yeah,
with the audience, right? So it's this beautiful synergy between the venue and all the care that goes into the venue, to the audience, and to the performer. So so I guess that doesn't really answer the question, but hall, like in terms of concert halls, I mean, some of the larger halls, yeah, were like maybe 25 to 3,000, seat halls. There are some really beautiful halls that I've got to play at in Japan. Of course, I mean, in Europe. I remember when I was touring with Tommy Emmanuel, there was this beautiful hall in Russia that we played, and it was just unlike anywhere I've played before. So you have these snippets, of these moments that you recall in performances, and sometimes it's not even the large ones. Sometimes it's the very intimate ones
right,
that you remember, like maybe in a certain part of a song, you could just feel yourself being embraced by the audience, or you could hear someone take a breath,
yeah,
at that exact moment that you heard the last note of that song just decay, just things
yeah.
like that you remember. And I started out playing in coffee shops.
Mm,
So for me, that's of course where I'm always most comfortable. But there's nothing like playing in a hall where you feel like the entire venue, the acoustics of the room become part of your instrument, become part of your sound, become,
yeah,
part of the you know what helps to translate that emotion.
right.
That's the greatest feeling.
Yeah, and, what I love too about being, live performance is that experience, that performance is never gonna be exactly the same again, and that makes it so special to
Yeah,
share in a space with
exactly.
folks.
Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right. It's always new. There's a Japanese word that I learned. It's ichigo ichie, and
Mm,
the direct translation of that is once in a lifetime. But it has to do more with people coming together and sharing an experience and recognizing that this experience will never happen the same way ever again with the exact group
right.
of people,
Yeah,
so it's really appreciating that for what it is and knowing it's never gonna happen again,
right.
and that's Ichigo Ichi, and that's what
Awesome.
every performance is like.
That's fantastic, I love that. Well, we've got another question up from James. "I love watching your fingers move, especially in Let's Dance. I wanted to know how long does it normally take you to write an original piece like Blue Roses?"
Oh, thank you, James. Yeah, Let's Dance was a piece that was inspired by an old Carlos Montoya record that I grew up listening to. Just a quick story about Carlos Montoya. The first time I heard his album, there wasn't any video. We didn't have YouTube when I was a kid or things like that, the internet. So I would listen to Carlos Montoya and I would hear someone strumming the guitar, and then I'd hear someone picking like a lead part, and then I'd hear all this percussion stuff. So I used to think Carlos Montoya was a three-piece band. And then when someone told me, no, that's just one guy on the guitar. Then after that, when I listened to the record, the visual that I had of his fingers and all the things that he must have been doing to create all that sound, really sparked some creativity, and that's what led to that piece there. So it incorporates a lot of some of the flamenco techniques, which are all wrong because I was just going by ear. I didn't learn the proper technique to do it. But I was like, how am I creating that? How is he creating that sound? And I would just try different things with my fingers, right, to make that sound. Um, but as far as like a ballad like Blue Roses Falling, um, that song was inspired by a friend of mine whose grandmother was ill, and I know I just told this story during the concert part, but that was really what it was. It was this image of her sharing, when she was lying in the hospital bed, and at night looking up at the ceiling, this white, just white, very sterile looking ceiling, but she would have visions of blue roses, just covering the ceiling, and at night the petals falling on top of her. And I just remember, because when we would go to visit her at the hospital, it was always such a, because we knew she didn't have much time left, so it was heartbreaking, going down and being there and just recognizing that, we don't know how many times we'll be able to go and visit her, but to see the peace in her eyes, and how comfortable she was, and how much she appreciated the beauty that she saw, it completely transformed the emotion of those visits. And and I remember, it was just shortly after she passed, that story always stuck with me. And I remember just sitting down with my ukulele one day, and I started thinking about that, and imagining the rose petals falling, and just the beauty in that. But also, it's the a big part of the song was that moment where someone's passing, and you have that moment of like, you don't want to let go, and you're just holding on, holding on, holding on. But then there comes that point where where you where you realize that I can't hold on any longer, and I have to release this person. And with that release, um finding beauty in that, being okay with it, accepting it, knowing that they're going to be in a better place, and with no pain. And it's it's something that obviously none of us who are still on this earth can fully understand, but I do believe that, and it's something that helps me, with losing a loved one. And
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's what that song is about.
Yeah.
So
It's a gorgeous piece. Absolutely
thank you.
beautiful. Oh my goodness. We have another one from Alexia. Hi, Mr. Shimabukuro. I loved your performance, especially your piece, Blue Roses Falling, and um, Blue Roses Falling and rendition of Ave Maria. I noticed a lot of soothing tones in your songs. What's your creative process like?
Oh, thank you very much, Alexia. Yeah, I guess, whenever, it depends. When I'm taking a piece like Schubert's Ave Maria, for me it's really the emotional content, what I experiences that I've had when I first heard that piece, or heard someone sing it or perform it. The feeling that I got, how it, certain passages would just I don't know, give you that big knot in your throat, or just really hit you deep inside your chest. Those are the feelings that I try to focus on. And and for me, the thing is, if I if it's something I've experienced before, I I'm usually I'm usually pretty good about getting back to that moment in time when I felt that. And that's what I try to do. When I'm playing a song, I try to go back to to a very specific emotion, or a very specific um time and place that I can remember, when I was feeling a certain thing, and then I would play the piece and just holding that emotion in there. And and sometimes when I play Ave Maria, it's not always that not in the throat feeling. Sometimes it's more of a, sometimes it's more it's lighter, and just more of that peaceful, relaxing feeling. So sometimes I have a different image, or I recall a different memory, and to me that's why I'll never get tired of playing the same song over and over. Some people say, oh, I don't like playing this song because I played it 100 times. Like, to me, every time I play it, um I'm because you're always playing it with a different memory, or not the same memory every time, I should say. It always feels new. It always feels fresh, and a piece like Ave Maria is just so perfectly written. So how could you ever get tired of listening to or hearing that song or playing it? So
Hard
yeah.
to beat Schubert.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Wonderful. We got one from Riley. You mentioned in the concert you are a huge Bruce Lee fan. Do you have any other role models, maybe some that are artists slash musicians you recommend we start listening to?
Yeah. I mean, I do. A lot of my I guess I learned early on well, I don't know if I really went into depth of why Bruce Lee was such an influence. It was because when I was a kid, I remember making that connection, when he would talk about all the different styles of martial arts, right? His whole thing was, because he's recognized as the founder of mixed martial arts. He was,
Yeah,
if not I mean, he was, I believe he was the first guy to really embrace all different styles of martial arts, right?
right.
And take all the elements that really expressed who he was and put it into one thing. And
Yeah,
he would always talk about not having a style, or to be like water and be
right,
flexible, and right. So I always thought that, man, that's so cool, because it's like, if you think of, different genres of music as different styles of martial arts, you can apply that same philosophy, right?
yeah,
So I remember when I was a teenager thinking like, oh, that's such a great way to look at all music, not just focusing on one style, but listening to everything, and then just understanding that, yeah, okay, I might like this jazz piece, but I don't like this one, or I may like this classical piece, but I don't like that one. And just because there's one classical piece that I like doesn't mean I don't like all classical music, right? Or
right,
if there's one Hawaiian song that I really like, but I don't like this particular song, doesn't mean I like all Hawaiian music, or I don't like all Hawaiian music, right? And there's so many variables in it, right? Because it's not just the song itself, but it's how it was performed. Maybe it was how it was recorded. Maybe it was, I mean, there's just so many different things. It could be the mood I was in, or
yeah,
the experiences that I had up until that point when I first heard the piece. And we've all experienced that, where we may have heard something 10 years ago and we're like, oh, that's a nice song. But then you hear it like 10 years later in a different context with different experiences. And you're like, oh my gosh, that song makes me cry every time I hear it. So I realized, early on that, yeah, just to be open to everything. And Bruce Lee was definitely open, to all styles of music, and I mean, not music, but all styles of martial arts. And
yeah.
that philosophy really stuck with me. Other artists that I've enjoyed over the years, that I just thought were so inspirational, were people like Michael Jordan. He was another one. I used to love watching him play basketball. I'm a horrible basketball player. In fact, I'm not much of an athlete, but I just loved watching him play, because there was a point when I thought being in the zone, when you're playing and you're in the zone, I used to think like that's when I would just close my eyes and just block everything out and just be doing my thing, and yeah, I'm in the zone. I remember thinking that's the goal. That's where you want to be.
Yeah.
But then I remember watching Michael Jordan play this one particular game, and it was that one that game where he scored like 33 points in the first half,
Right.
and everything that he threw up just went in, right? I mean, he was just throwing up things, and they just kept going in. And there was a point where he was like running back, after he scored a point, and he went like this. He was like, I don't know, today's my day. Everything's going in. So, and I remember watching that and being so inspired, because I realized that he was that particular day, he was so in the zone, but I realized that he wasn't tuning everything out. He
Mm,
was being hypersensitive to everything that was around him, right? So
yeah.
so when he was in the zone, he knew where every single one of his teammates were. He knew where every single one of his opponents were on the on the court. He knew the timing of the shot clock. I mean, he could hear people yelling. I mean, he took it all in and was able to function under that pressure, and just be one with everything, and then that's when I realized, okay, that's like next level in the zone there, right? So then I remember after that specific game, I just completely changed my attitude
Mm,
on on how I would try to focus on playing, and not blocking everything out, but then taking everything in,
yeah.
and letting that, not being afraid to let that affect you, and not,
Right.
don't block it out because you don't want it to affect what you're doing. You want to embrace it because it is part of the moment. It is part of what's
Right.
happening. And you need to acknowledge all those things and let it affect what you're doing, because then it's to me, that's true expression.
Yeah.
That's true. That's life. That's
Right.
real life.
Speaking to the truth of that moment and everything in it. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, we've got one from Alex. Hey, Jake, I love the performance. Your flamenco playing is absolutely superb. What was your favorite collaborative effort with another artist?
Oh, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Oh man, my favorite. That's a tough one. I will say that my first my first real tour, when I went out on a bus and all of that, was with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, and
Mm,
that was back in 2005. And I'll never forget how inspired, I was. I mean, there with Bela Fleck, who was one of my heroes. Victor Wooten,
mm,
Future Man, Jeff Coffin was playing horn with them. And what I especially loved about that experience was, of course, on stage. I mean, they were just so brilliant, and I was just scared to death every night joining them on stage. I would stand between Bela and Victor, and then we would take turns soloing, and I'd just be like, I do not want to be soloing after these guys, but what I loved most about that tour was everything that happened, off stage as well,
mm,
because the performances were always unbelievable, right? But the
yeah,
sound checks were insane, because they were just so experimental, and they were just having fun, and they would just cut loose. And I just be like, how are you guys even doing that? Right. Um, but the other thing that I love too is when we weren't even at the venues. I mean, Bela Fleck, I used to always think like, what does someone like Bela Fleck practice? Why does he even have to practice? But that guy never put his banjo down. I mean, he
wow.
was just constantly working on stuff. From the time he'd wake up in the morning, he'd pick up his banjo and he'd be working on these riffs, or, some kind of cascading line that he was working on, or these different arpeggio patterns. And I was so inspired because, you know, it just made me realize like
Mm,
the kind of work and dedication, it takes. And I mean, that's why, like, I mean, for me, I'll never complain about practicing, because I know that there are people out there who practice 10 times more than I practice, and so it's, you always gotta keep pushing yourself, right?
yeah.
So yeah, Bela Fleck was, he was that tour really opened my eyes, and and collaborations after that, people like Yo-Yo Ma was another
Yeah,
one, recording with him and perform, just being in the studio with him. Gosh, he was one of my childhood heroes. I mean, still one of my heroes, and of course musically, but also his heart for humanity, for the community, for you know bridging that gap right from
yeah,
the classical world to everything. And yeah, he's just such an incredible human being.
that's fantastic. We've got one from William. Did you ever get the opportunity to play Dragon for Bruce Lee?
Oh no, I never did. I never did. But yeah, that would that would have been cool.
Been awesome.
But yeah, I used to, whenever I would play in Seattle, I would go and visit his the gravesite
Yeah,
there. And yeah, it was so cool, man. I just yeah, he was a special, he was just one of those special human beings. And
absolutely.
yeah, so.
Mhm. Well, we've got one from LK. Did you ever think about switching instruments after playing ukulele for so long? I really enjoyed your performance.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I never I never really had the desire to play anything else. Sometimes I was forced to play other instruments, like when I was in intermediate and high school, and I was in the school band and in marching band and things like that. They didn't have a place for ukulele, so I played percussion and drums. Um, However, my senior year though, we did a Hawaiian show, and so I got to play ukulele on the sidelines. My band director said, "Oh, would you want to play you?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely." I don't have to carry that big bass drum. Yeah, I'd be happy to stay on the sideline and strum the ukulele. But I dabbled with a little bit of guitar and piano. But I mean, if you asked me to play a song, I would just know a few chords, but that's about it. Um, but I love picking up other instruments, because it gets me away from the muscle memory stuff. Like sometimes when I pick up the ukulele, my fingers, they immediately go to the things that they've done before, right?
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to break out of those habits, right? People call them, your not signature, well, signature licks, or something
Yeah.
that certain players have, right? Like when you hear a certain guitar player do something, you're like, oh, I know who that is, or right. Um and it's hard to get out of that mode. But especially when you're composing, because you don't want everything to sound the same. So I
Right.
find that if I sit at the piano, or if I pick up the guitar or the bass or another instrument that I'm not familiar with, then I'm relying more on my ear, right, to
Yeah.
listen melodically what I want. And then you do if you do the same thing that you would normally do on an ukulele, when you do it on a different instrument, it becomes something completely different. And you're like,
Right.
oh, that's cool. I like that. And then you got to go pick up your ukulele and then figure out how to do that on your ukulele. So it just opens up. It's just another tool that I like to use to create something that, just get new ideas for myself.
Yeah. There's a lot of value in seeing a piece of music from different perspectives and coming back and all of that. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic part of the creative process. We got one from Skylar. The performance was fantastic. You said you were never expecting to have the chance to perform at a TED Talk. Is there any other place you never thought you would perform and were able to?
Oh, thank you, Skylar. Let's see. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's just so many places. I mean, to be honest, I never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be a touring musician one day. I never thought that I'd be traveling and having these opportunities. So there are just way too many, places to name. I mean, but I'm trying to think of, I guess I don't know if I mentioned this in the concert portion, but back in 2010, um, I went with Bette Midler to Blackpool, England, and we did a concert there for the royal family.
Wow.
Uh, that was yeah, I think that was back in 2010. It was the Blackpool Opera House, and after the concert, we got to meet the Queen, and I like to tell this story. It's pretty funny. Oh, in fact, I have the picture here.
Oh, nice.
This was I think this was back in 2010. So that's me there meeting the Queen, shaking her
Oh
hand.
my goodness.
Bette Midler in the purple dress there. And
That's so
I had
cool.
really long hair back then. But but it was so cool because you know, obviously in the picture you can see I got to shake her hand and stuff, but what was neat was the producer of the show. They were mentioning that, okay, you know, they just wanted to go over the rules with us because we're backstage and the Queen Elizabeth was going to come backstage to
Yeah,
greet us. So they just said like, okay, you know, I just want you to know you're not allowed to speak to her first. You got to let her speak first.
yeah.
The second thing was you're not allowed to reach for her hand. You have to wait until she extends her hand and then
Hmm.
you can shake her hand. And the third thing he said was you don't have to bow because it was just a casual meeting. You
Mm.
know, you don't have to bow or curtsy. So don't worry about that. So I was like, okay, good, because I didn't know what the proper way to bow is, right? And it's funny because we were all lined up, and there was, I mean, like Whoopi Goldberg was
Oh
there,
man.
obviously, you know, Bette Midler, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Michael Bublé. So we're
Wow.
all lined up uh, backstage, and as soon as she walked in, you know, we're all like lined up like this thing. And then, and I tell people, I think it's the Japanese in me because as soon as she walked in, I was the only one like bowing like this, going like this, you know. After he said, don't worry about bowing. But it was so funny. I must have looked like a chicken, you know, just like there were all these people. But yeah, that was such a cool moment. I mean, I never in my wildest dreams think the ukulele would take me there. So yeah.
That's fantastic meeting the Queen. Oh man. Shivani says, "Hi Jake. I loved your performance. What would you say has been the most challenging part of your music journey and career?"
Oh, okay. Thank you, Shivani. I gosh, yeah, there's a lot of things. I think for me it's really trying to find that balance, right? Of and I think that that's for everyone, right? Finding that
Mhm.
balance between, you know, career and family or you know your passion and
Yeah,
you know kids, you know, I mean all those things. Yeah, I think just maintaining that balance where I can feel um fulfilled, you know, creatively, right? Exploring this passion that I have for music and expression, um, but also finding ways to balance that, you know, with my two wonderful children and my wife, and
yeah,
being home in Hawaii, and and just the physical, you know, the physicality of traveling, right, and being on
right.
the road. So it's been really interesting, especially right now. During this time, you know, this is the first time in over 20 years that I've been in one place for this amount of time. So you know, it was definitely an adjustment. A lot of all my family, they would joke around. They'd be like, "Oh, so what?" My wife's name is Kelly, and they'd be like, "Oh, so what? Are you driving Kelly crazy yet?" Right? Because she's not used to having me around this much. So I was like, "Wow." But but no, but it's been, you know, it's been, there's always a silver lining,
Yeah,
and there's always different ways to look at challenges, and so, you know, we've been staying very positive and just
yeah,
trying to you know, to take, I mean, take take this time, and really
Yeah.
channel something positive out of it, so as best as we can. But it's there are a lot of challenges. That's probably not what you meant when you were asking about challenges, but probably more what you're referring to are things like in the beginning when I first started touring, with the ukulele. uh there were people that would that just don't take you seriously, right? Because you're like, who's
Yeah.
this guy with an ukulele? Right? So, things like that. I remember when I first would leave Hawaii to do shows. One of the things that I would have trouble with is when I'd show up to the venue, and I wasn't traveling with a sound engineer or things like that
Right.
back then. A lot of times it was just me by myself or me with
Yeah.
my manager, and so we'd show up to the venue, and the first thing the engineer would do is they'd see an ukulele, so they would be like, "Oh, okay, great, it's an ukulele." But their reference for what an ukulele is supposed to sound like was very different from
Right.
what I was trying to go for. So the first thing they would do is roll off all the low end on the ukulele, so you would just have this really tinny dinky 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 sound, and I would try to explain like, that's kind of not what I'm going for, but so it was just, I think one of the biggest challenges was trying to get people on the same page, right? Of
Right.
what I was trying to go for, and but it's always been a great learning experience. I'm constantly learning from the people that I work with, and that wasn't, and I don't want to say that that happened a lot, but I mean there were moments where I would walk into a venue and the engineer there would be like, okay, great, plug it, he would listen to my instrument, and I would plug it in, and they would just make it sound spectacular, so
Awesome.
there's just, it's all, everybody has different approaches,
Right.
and you can always learn. So, and but yeah, but that was, that would be one of the things, maybe more along the lines of what you're referring to. So,
Oh,
all
man.
right.
Well, speaking of learning, Melody says, "Hi, Jake. I am a children's ukulele teacher right here in Clemson. Thank you so much for sharing your passion with us. How much did you practice as a child? You are such an inspiration to us."
Oh, Melody, thank you so much. Yeah, big shout out to teachers, because
Yeah,
yeah, thank
absolutely.
you for, yeah, your commitment and the sacrifices that you're all making. Um, but I do want to say that I practiced a lot, as a kid, but I never thought of it as practice. It wasn't like I would set a timer and be like, okay, I got to practice for 3 hours or something like that. I would just play, and honestly, Melody, like sometimes I would race home from school because I wanted to go home to play my ukulele, and I would go home and I would just be playing, and my parents would actually have to take it away from me, and they would say, "Okay, you can't touch your ukulele until you do your homework, eat your dinner, take a bath, and brush your teeth," right? So they would kind of use that as a way to get me to do my other chores, but that's how much I loved, playing it. So it wasn't. I don't know exactly how many hours I would practice a day, but I would just play it all the time. I mean, even when we go for drives or we,
Mhm.
go to the supermarket, and I jump in the car, I'd have my ukulele and I'd be playing it in the back seat. And that's one of the advantages to that instrument is you can take it with you everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So you can practice anywhere at any time. I mean, I would go hiking and take it with me, just throw it in my backpack and find a little rock to sit on and just play. I'd go to the beach and I'd take it with me and play. We'd go to the local mall, and I would just like sit on the side and I would practice and play, and people would just come around and listen. So, and even with my kids now, I have two kids, two boys. They're 8 and 5, and basically in every room, in the house, there's an ukulele somewhere within arm's reach. So, and what I love about that is it makes the instrument accessible to them at any moment that they have just any desire to make a sound. It's like I kind of feel like playing it. They can just pick it up and do something. And every time they pick it up, they'll sit there for at least 10 or 15 minutes playing it, even if they meant to just pick it up and just do something really quick. And,
Nice.
and that's always the case, even with me. Sometimes I'll have an idea for a melody in my head, and then I'd be like, oh, and I'd grab my ukulele and then I'd play it like, oh, okay, all right, okay, I see what's happening. And then next thing I know, I just get drawn into it, and that's like 3 hours later. Oh shoot, I gotta go pick up the kids. So it's that, and I think that's one of the keys, is making it accessible, making it easy to
Yeah.
just to pick up. If it's in a case in the
Mhm.
closet with another box on it, you're less likely to go through the trouble of taking it out and doing all that, right?
Totally.
But if it's just sitting right on your sofa, and you come home from work and you sit on the sofa and it's right there, you're just going to reach for it, pick it up,
Ready to
and
go.
play. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Mm. So we've got one from Abby. I loved your performance. You played a great variety of music tonight. What is your favorite genre of music to play?
Oh, thank you, Abby. Oh, my favorite genre again. I don't have a favorite genre, but there are certain songs that I do love playing. And it just depends. It depends on my mood. I don't think I played it tonight, but there's a Japanese folk song called Sakura Sakura.
Mhm.
It's about the cherry blossom season in Japan. And in that arrangement, I really tried to mimic the sound of the koto, which is a 13-string Japanese harp. And sometimes I just need to hear that sound, and I'll just pick up the ukulele and make that sound. It's like it sounds like this, but that kind of it just takes me to a different place, as opposed to just kind of the yeah, you know so it just depends. I mean, I'll pick it up and just a certain chord voicing or just an interval, just something like that might just take me to a different place, or like, where I might hit. And I don't know, it just transports me. So yeah, so it's not necessarily a certain song, but sometimes it's a sound that I want to hear, just a certain sound that I want to play. And it doesn't matter what the song is, because I'll use the song as a vehicle to express that sound or that feeling, right? So I could take a song that I play all the time, but if I'm feeling more melancholic, I can do things to the arrangement of that piece to make it feel more that way. Or if I want to express something more joyful, I can take that same song and make it feel more joyful. So it just, and that's the thing, the song is really just, it's just it's just a frame, right? And then you put whatever you want into it.
Wonderful. Um, so we've got one from Grant. Hey, Jake, thanks for the amazing performance. I wanted to know how much time you spent with your ukulele experimenting around with sounds and any particular memories you have while you were composing.
Oh, thank you, Grant. Let's see. I there was a point where I was experimenting a lot, doing a lot of different things. I mean, to the point where the sound of the ukulele was just unrecognizable. Yeah, and that was a great experience for me, and I had this. So this must have been back in 1999. I remember I was experimenting a lot with things and making all kinds of weird sometimes obnoxious noises with the instrument, you using effect pedals and things like
Yeah.
that. And I went to Japan that year, and I opened for a traditional Hawaiian band, and they were friends of mine. They were older generation musicians, but people that I really respected and looked up to, grew up listening to. And they were known as the Side Order Band, but it was Chris Kamaka, Brian Tolentino, Asa Young, and Del Beasley. And these guys are, I mean, they're such prolific, traditional Hawaiian music writers and performers. They're amazing musicians. So I went up to Japan with them and did 5 shows with them. And I remember the first show I did with them, I didn't really know what to expect, and I went up there and I played my set. I did a lot of these weird kind of, now this, keep in mind, this was because it was a traditional Hawaiian show. Um, there was a lot there. There were hula dancers there, so this was a real, Hawaiian music cultural performance. So, and I remember I went in there, and at the time I was like, oh man, I want to show them all this cool stuff, that I'm doing. And so I came up and I played for about 20 minutes, and I didn't do any traditional songs because for one thing, I figured that, well, they were going to do traditional music, so I
Right.
wanted to do something different. So I started playing this kind of like weird experimental stuff with loopers um and I just remember the audience kind of being like, oh, okay, is this the ukulele? Wait, what are we listening to? But and this was in Japan, right? So they don't. So I don't speak. I couldn't speak Japanese back then. I still don't really. I can speak a little now, but so I couldn't really communicate what I was trying to do or what I was doing. But I remember that after that, I sat down, and then the Side Order Band went up and they played, and they opened up with one of my favorite Hawaiian pieces called Owailai.
Mm,
And they just launched into it with their, three part, 4-part harmony, started singing, and it just hit me in a place that was, and I guess it was being away from Hawaii, being in this foreign place. Um and I just started crying, and
mm,
I couldn't understand why, but it just took me back to my childhood, like
yeah.
my initial love of the ukulele and what I love so much about it. The
Yeah.
sound, just the natural beauty, right, of that
Right.
instrument, and the simplicity. Um, so after that trip, I remember realizing that, okay, I need to figure out balance, right,
Yeah.
between the traditional sounds and the non-traditional sounds. And I'm glad that happened. It was like a just like a a good slap in the face, right, to
Right.
remind me to not forget my roots, and not forget where I came from, and to also don't forget to honor the players, right, who
Yeah.
inspired the players who inspired me,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so it was a great lesson, and till this day I still thank them. Every time I see them, I still thank them for that, because it was the best thing that happened to me.
That's wonderful. And it's fantastic to look back at those experiences and be able to point to those and say, "Man, that was a really formative time for me too."
Mm.
Um, we've got Katie here. I'm truly
Hi,
amazed at your
Katie.
performance. I never had any idea how much you could do with the ukulele.
Oh, thank you, Katie. That's one thing that I love about the ukulele, and I mean, there's a lot of truth to this, even though it sounds like I'm jokingly saying it, but one of the things that I love about the ukulele is it's not intimidating. You don't. I tell people you don't have to be a musician to play the ukulele. Um, you can. I've done some workshops and master classes, in the past, where people who have never played an instrument, within
Yeah.
2 minutes they were already playing a song. And I think that's the beauty of this instrument. I tell people, like, when you first pick it up, if it's tuned properly, I tell them, okay, just take your index finger and put it in the bottom left hand corner, and they do that, and they're like, okay. I'm like, okay, now move it up a string, and they're like, okay. Like, I'm like, see, you're already playing a song. I mean, with those two chords, I mean, even if it's something like, the incy wincy spider went up the water spout, or roll, roll, roll your boat gently down the stream, right? Da 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 da. Life is but a dream, right? You could do love, love me do. You know I love you. So just as simple as that, one finger and just hopping back and forth on these two those two strings there,
Yeah.
they're immediately playing, and it's such a joy to see their eyes light up, and they're like, I'm playing an instrument, because they never thought they'd be playing an instrument before. So that's what I love about the ukulele, right? Because it's like you can do the very minimal with it and feel that same joy, but then you can also get complex with it as
Yeah.
well, and still feel that same kind of joy.
Yeah.
With a lot of instruments, you can't do that, right? Like if you play the violin or the cello in the early stages, no one's feeling any joy, right? It's painful. The sound is not where it doesn't sound like Itzhak Perlman, right? So it's difficult, right? It's
Um,
difficult to if you don't have the patience and you don't have the drive, for and that the kind of commitment that it takes, right, to get
right.
to a level where you can appreciate it,
Yeah.
then it can be very discouraging. But with the ukulele, you immediately get that joy and that satisfaction, and it's fun. And I think that's the biggest thing is I think music is something that we all need. We all
Yeah.
need to feel that joy of whether it's playing an instrument or singing or um just expressing ourselves through melody, right? In
Yeah.
in some in some melodic or rhythmic way, whether it's dancing or
Yeah.
that's why art is so important. And but I can talk for hours about this. So
It's
I'll
the joy of creation. There's almost nothing like it. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yes.
fantastic. We got a comment here from Eric. Thank you for your beautiful words, messages, and music.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a joy. I'm so grateful. I always thank my mom. I always tell her, thank you for introducing me to music, because it's made me who I am
Yeah.
today. And and there are musicians and artists that say, well, that that's my music persona is different from this, but for me it's always been the same. I mean, I feel like all the lessons that I've learned and the discoveries that I've made on this instrument have applied directly, to my life. Like
Yeah.
something as simple as working on an arrangement, and just getting to the meat of it, and not overcomplicating it and keeping it simple, right?
Right.
You can apply that to your own life, when you're having a conversation with somebody, getting to the meat of it, the truth, the heart of it, and keeping it simple. I mean, there are just so many things that the ukulele has taught me that has just made a better life, for me. Just my perspective on things, um my approach, and
Yeah.
my attitude, right?
Right.
With the ukulele, there's no ego in playing the ukulele. So it's reminding yourself to always be humble, right? When
Right.
you're the only ukulele player in the room, it's best to be humble.
Always good advice to be humble.
Yeah.
Oh, we got maybe a couple more questions here. We've got one from Nicholas. This is actually the dean of our college.
Oh,
It's good
all
to
right.
see you. Great
Hey, Nicholas.
performance. What first brought you to the ukulele?
Well, thank you first of all, and yeah, I just it was my mom, and of course, growing up in Hawaii, we heard the ukulele all the time. Whether it was, I mean, we could be shopping at the mall, and there'd be a bunch of kids playing it. You'd be down at the beach, and there'd be like a senior citizen group, playing the ukulele and singing songs, and so it was something that was very common. I mean, you'd go to any local party birthday, a luau or whatever, people are always play there'd be a point after everyone's eating and all that everyone just kind of gravitates toward one room,
Yeah.
and there'd be the musicians in the family or whatever would take out their instruments, and they would what they call kani kapila, or they'd have just a jam session for just for hours and hours and hours, and everyone would just sit there and listen and be smiling and singing along. So it was just a big part of the culture. So my mom played, and when I was about 4 years old, well, and this was after about a year of me begging her to let me play it or to
Yeah.
teach me. When I was 4, she finally thought, okay, well, here, I'll teach you a few chords or whatever, and I just fell in love with it. So, yeah,
It's wonderful.
that's it.
Fantastic. So maybe we have one more question, but while we're waiting for that, Jake, thank you so much again for this experience, both the Q&A with us and the performance too. This has been wonderful. So we really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. No, this is
Um,
a joy. I can talk about music all day. I lo I really can. I mean,
yeah.
I love it. So,
Oh,
yeah.
we got one from Matt. Hey, Jake, thanks so much for performing for us. I was wondering how you were able to create a hard enough line over the ukulele's hole to strum and still get a sound at around minute 13 of the video. I guess it's when you went real far up on the string there,
Oh,
maybe.
um, yeah. Yeah, it's an old guitar trick that uh, but it's basically, I yeah, it's basically just running your fingernail along the string
Ah,
as you're plucking it, right? Just like this, and it'll just keep
it just keeps going.
until you run out of string, basically. But yeah, but those kinds of little tricks and stuff. I remember loving. Yeah, I used to love watching guitar players, do things like that. There's a guitar player in Hawaii that I grew up listening to. He was a slack key guitar player that I just loved. His name was Ledward Kaapana, and he used to do these amazing things with when he would play the song, and he'd be like playing something here, and then his arm would come around, and he would use his forearm to actually like fret the strings like this. And as a kid watching that, I just always thought, that was so cool, because it may not be the the most musical or whatever, but to me, when in the performing arts world, right? It's not just what you're hearing, but it's the visual aspect of it too, right? So I don't know. So I've always felt that, having some of those types of visual things, are important, are important in a performance. And so I love doing things like that. It's really not anything new, but I think it does add an element of excitement, and I don't think you can really get that sound in a way that's more subtle visually. So I think you kind of have to do that. But yeah, but again, it's just I just love having fun with the instrument, and trying different things. So, but thank you for that. Yeah.
Sorry about that, y'all. I cut out for a second, so I
Oh,
had to
no,
jump
no,
back
no,
in.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the joys of technology. I'm now on my phone, but Jake, thank you so much again for this. This was wonderful, and I did have one more question for you as we head out. To those aspiring musicians and even amateur musicians too, what advice would you give them to grow in their craft?
Oh, man. Well, something that was taught to me like early on, and I'll never forget it until this day. it's still something that sticks with me is always strive to be a good person first and a good musician second, or a good artist second. And all the elements, I mean, all the things that you apply to trying to better yourself as a person, can directly be applied to your musicianship and your playing, right? So for example, just the hard work, being a hard worker, right, in life, and it can be applied to your craft, working hard and playing, just working hard on a piece, right? That determination, that grit, right? You apply that to your personality, develop that. And if you apply that to your craft, you're going to be a better player. um being empathetic, having that empathy for others, as an artist, when you get up on a stage, or when you stand up on that Brooks Center stage, and you're playing a song, that empathy, that approach, you encompass, your audience, you encompass the people around you, you're respectful and mindful of the ushers, that worked hard to get everybody into the room and give everyone a pleasant experience, the tech crew, the directors, the artistic directors, the people, the board, the people who work hard behind behind the screen, behind closed doors, even to the buyers out there, right? It's all of that. And when you're mindful of all of those things, you appreciate every little thing, that you experience the moment you walk into the theater, walk into the Brooks Center. And having that kind of appreciation, being grateful, if you're up there on stage playing, and you play with gratitude and that appreciation, it comes across. And I don't know, I've always just kept that in the back of my head, always. It's just, even if I get frustrated with something, or if I feel like something's not going my way, or going right, I always remember that,
Yeah.
and then it puts things, it aligns my perspective in a way that I can see the positive or the silver lining of it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Jake. And thank you to all of our patrons who tuned in tonight and your wonderful questions. This was a lot of fun. Again, I'm sorry, my internet cut out, so I'm on my phone now. But it's good to have y'all here. And as always, stay safe and stay healthy and have a
Yeah.
great night. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you so much. Aloha, everyone. Keep supporting the Brooks Center. Yee!
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Awesome.
Thank you.